In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of the standard chart tools, and we're going to start out with reviewing the default settings of the tool. When you first download the study from the App Store, you will need to add it to a chart, and this is what you will see the first time you load it. This is the default settings and how they will appear on your chart. As you can see, we have the bands drawn, and the red area of the band is showing the area of the band that's been penetrated. You can see down here this band has not been penetrated at all, and you see this indicator here, it's 100% or 0% penetration. It tells you the size of the risk of the band, $440, and it gives you the proximal and distal values of the band, along with the date and time that the band was created. You can also see these red and green dots. These represent the swing highs and swing lows of price action. And then we have also this band here, these lines here, which is your impulse and correction. In addition, you also have the prior trend, which is marked here in blue, and it shows you prior price action, so you can see whether you are at the top of prior price action, in the middle, or in the lower area, to determine whether you would be considering going long or short in your trading strategy. In addition, you have these red and green boxes. They are bull and bear boxes. Again, giving you an indication of how the market is trending. In the standard chart tools, there are several master switches which we are going to review in this video. All right, we're going to go into Studies, Edit Studies. We're going to go to the Chart Tool Standard and customize that. And you can see that we have a series of master switches here. We're going to start out by showing you what the Show Supply Demand Bands master switch does. If we set this to false, you can see now that we no longer see the supply and demand bands. We just see the swing highs, swing lows, impulse correction, the bull and bear boxes, and the prior trend indicated on the chart. So let's go and turn bands back on and talk about some of the other master settings. And as a reminder, all of our settings have to have the quotes before and after them, and your tool comes with default settings, and you have a spreadsheet that defines the value of all the master settings for the standard chart tools. So the next thing we have is swing highs and swing lows. Those are the red and green dots. So if you decide that you don't want those, makes your chart look too busy, we can turn those off. You can turn off the swing lows. And this is how your chart will look when you take off the swing highs and swing lows. And you can see our bands are now back. You may want to turn the prior trend off. And if you do that, You will also notice that the CIC high and low will be turned off, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. So let me get... Now we've got our trend turned off as well. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off the impulse and the segments, the bull and bear boxes. And at this point, all you will have left is your supply bands, because the CIC high-low is tied to the prior trend. So with all the master switches turned off, with the exception of the bands, you can now see that this is how your chart would look. And so depending on what type of analysis you're doing, you may want to turn features on and off. So I'm getting ready to turn prior trend back on, because I want to talk to you about the CIC high-low and show you how to turn that off. Okay, so the CIC low is here, so that's the candle that controls the low, and the CIC high is here, and it's labeled. I just darkened that label up and changed the color so you'd be able to see it more easily, and then you can see that each of the segments in the trend have the value. So the 0, the 33%, the 66%, and the 100% value. So I changed the transparency on those so you can see those a little more easily. So if you did not want to see the CICs labeled, then you would change this setting here to false. So now you can see the CICs are no longer labeled on the prior trend. So that is a brief overview of the master switches and how to turn different features on and off in the chart tool. The next setting we're going to review is the commonly used setting ATR Length. ATR length is important for helping us identify areas of supply and demand. ATR stands for average true range, and it is looking at each candle and the range of that candle and calculating an average. So when we look at a chart, one of the challenges we have is that depending on the scaling of the chart, an area may look like it's a good place to buy or sell, but it's really difficult to do it objectively. So by using the average true range length, we can put a objective method for drawing bands of supply and demand on a chart. So let's go ahead and turn our study on. So here's the default bands that are made with an ATR length of 14. So we go into Edit Studies, Customize. We have ATR length right here. The default is 14. Depending on the market you're analyzing, you may want to use a higher or lower ATR length. So let's change this to 25. And what that's going to do is it's going to use 25 candles to calculate the average instead of 14. And so you will see that it can change the appearance of and the determination of what bands are chosen because ATR is used to help determine, measure the leg in and the leg out strength of the band in order to determine if it should be marked on the chart. So you can see we now have an additional band we did not have before. So let me make this a little bigger just to help you understand the importance of ATR. So this box here shows you the origin of the zone, and you have your leg in, your base, and your leg out. So you have settings that determine the strength of your leg in and leg out setting, and that is based on the ATR. And so the ATR length is important in determining what zones get drawn on your chart. And we'll be talking about that more as we go into the other settings for drawing the different patterns. In this segment, we're going to talk about the commonly used setting band creation method for the standard tools. I have a TradeStation chart here, and I have the standard tools loaded, and we're going to go to Edit Studies, and currently I have everything, all the different switches turned off with the exception of the bands to just help you see things more easily. So if we go here, we have band creation method. The default is band creation method 3. Your options here are band creation method 1, 3, and 5. And so I will just, if I want to change this from the default of 3, I can put in a 5 or a 1 here and hit OK. And you can see now that my bands are drawn differently, with band creation method being a wider method of drawing the band. And let me take you through the little bit of the detail on the band creation methods. This slide shows you the band creation method for a drop base rally. And you can see here that the distal line is drawn the same regardless of the band creation method. But we have band creation method 1, 3, and 5. And you can see that 1 draws the narrowest zone, 2 is a medium zone, and 5 is a wider zone. And over here in the text, we have the details about how these are drawn. So the BCM1, the proximal line, is the lowest candle body top in the base. BCM3, the proximal line, is the highest candle body top in the base. And BCM5, the proximal line, is the high of the base. And then the distal line is the lowest low of the leg in, leg out, or base, with this being the leg in, this being the leg out, and this being the base. And in this scenario, this would be the low. If for some reason you had a longer wick here, that could make a different distal. Same for the leg out. This slide shows you a rally base rally with the same lines drawn. Again, you can see that you would have BCM 5 being your widest band creation method. This shows you how the methods are drawn on a drop base drop with your distal line here, and then your proximal lines for the different band creation methods. This is an example of a rally base drop, and again it's showing you where the lines would be placed in that scenario. So hopefully this will help you understand your options for band creation methods on the standard tools, chart tools application. In this section, we're going to talk about band management settings. We're going to be specifically talking about the keep broken bands. The band management settings are located in this area right here, and I've already changed keep broken bands to true, and this will show you bands that price has violated. So you can see here, this was a band, a supply band, that price eventually violated, and so it is this magenta color. So that way you can turn that on if you want to see prior price action and where bands might have been created. In this section, we're going to talk about the commonly used setting explain. And in order to use the explain function, you also have to use the candle number indicator. So we will show you how that works as well. So let's talk about the candle number indicator. And I have already loaded that onto my chart. And you can see right here is the candle number indicator. For a candle number, there's a couple things we'll need to customize. So on the General tab, User Defined, if there's a 0 here, you will need to change that to 1. And if by some chance this box right here is checked, you will need to uncheck it. We do not need this indicator to update tick by tick. And then under Scaling, the scale should be on No Axis and subgraph 1. Okay, so let's see how the candle number is used. If you left click above a candle, you'll get your data window and it'll show you down below. You can now see in orange the candle number is 4863. So you can use this information in several ways. Maybe there is a band drawn on your zone on your chart that you don't understand why that would be drawn there. And so what you can do is you can find the leg out candle and you can get that candle number, in this case 4853, and you can use the explain function to explain to you why that band was drawn. And on the flip side, I just put a yellow box here, but let's say maybe you would have normally drawn that as a band. So you can, again, find the, I have to move this line so we can get the box. But say this was going to be my leg out, candle 4888, I can actually ask the tool why it did not draw a band in that area. Another way you can see the candle number is using the Control-Shift-D to give you the data window. And again, you can see here that there's my candle number. And as I click on different candles, it will give me the appropriate number for that candle. So let's go do an explain function. So we're going to go into the chart tools here. Customize. Have to shift over to inputs. Okay, we're in the commonly used settings. And here's explain. The default on that is, I need to change this to true. And then we need to put a candle number in here. And so let's just put in that box we drew where we said why wasn't a zone draw there. We'll put in the 4888. And in this scenario, I'm going to leave the send to file set as default. So let's go see what the output tells us. So the default settings go to a print log, and how you get there is you go View, Easy Language, Print Log. And you can see here, it comes up, and let me just close this for right now. and this is the detail that you get. And you can actually, if you need to, you can go into preferences and make your font larger so you can see the information a little better. So it tells us here it could not find a drop base rally pattern, and in the case here we were looking at a pattern that would be a drop, a base, and a rally. So this is the area where we'd want to look on the explain file, and it tells us that it failed because the candle body percentage, which was an active rule, was rejected because it had to be at least 50% of the candle. But you can see there's a lot of different rules in here, and some of them will say they're inactive. And it looks through the different patterns. It said you couldn't find a rally-based drop because the leg out candle was the wrong color. And so, and it'll just take you through the different rules, and so you can see why each pattern was rejected for not being acceptable to be drawn as a supply or demand band. If you are having this output to the print log, I would suggest that you clear it each time so you don't get multiple explanations confused with one another. The other thing we can do is output the explain to a file. Let me show you how to do that. And so we're going to send it to a file. So we're going to change this to read true. And you have a base file name, and your default for that is it will put it, let me show you that real quick. So this is the path, the default path. It's your C chart tools data, and it will put the explain file there. And I've got a couple files here that I'll just go ahead and there are different files that I'll delete those just to keep this clean. And you may decide that you actually would prefer to put this in a specific location. And if you want to do that, you can just create a folder and then copy the address. And you can paste it into here, and there's a little bit of a specific format that you need to use for that, and I'll walk you through that real quick. Okay, I pasted the default path in here, and as you can see, it's C chart tools, and then it's the first part of the file name is explanation 4. So if you want to change the path of where you want this stored, it is important that you do not remove this explain for piece of it. So let me show you how to do that. So this is the path that we want to change to. And so we're going to go here, and within the quote marks, we're just going to highlight up to the backslash. And then, actually, I should have left that backslash in. So you can see now I've got the MES in there, and you can see that the path name is chart tools data / MES for the new folder you want to send it to, and explanation 4. So let's create this file. So we can see here that we now have our file created, and it says explanation 4, MES equals 107 XN, 15-minute interval. It gives you the date, okay, and the month for that candle. It also gives you the time of day. It was 10:45 in the morning. So it gives you a lot of detail here to help you understand what you analyzed. So let's open this up. And you can see this is a notepad, and it's all the same information, but it might be able to allow you to more easily search and see why, because you could search for the word fail if you were trying to understand why a pattern did not be created, and that would allow you to more quickly find the reason that your band was not created that you thought should have been put on the chart. So hopefully that will help you understand a little bit of the explain function. We have a much more detailed video that is on YouTube, and I will put a link for that in the comments. Under pattern settings, we're going to talk about max base size. So we're going to go into our studies. We're going in to customize the settings. And we will be scrolling down until we get into the pattern settings area. So for the 4 different patterns, in this case it's a drop-based rally, these settings have to be changed for each pattern. That gives you control in case you want to have different settings for the different patterns. The default for the max base size is 6. And we will change that to a lower number just so you can see the impact on the chart. We're going to make that 3. And we'll do that for each of the different settings. And you can see each different pattern has this row of hashtags to help you see when the next one starts. So we've got it in there. 1. Oh, we missed one. So I should have it in there 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you can see that it eliminated several bands on our chart. And so so now it only shows bands that have 3 candles in the base. So depending on the asset and the interval, you may want to change the number of candles in the base. We're going to talk about the pattern setting leg out strength. Here's our chart, and we've got our leg in, our base, and our leg out. So we're going to be talking about the strength of this leg, and it's going to be based on the ATR. So here's a chart, and it's got broken bands all turned on just so we can see more examples here. Go in and edit our study. And so we're going to go down to the pattern settings. We'll have to do that for each of the 4 pattern types. And the default is set to 1.25, and we're going to change the default setting to 1. And we could change this for each of the 4 patterns. And we'll see how that looks. Okay, so you can see definitely right here it added bands here. So by changing that leg out strength, you will have more bands drawn on your chart, and you will see some bands deleted because they might overlap with a band that was drawn from a different configuration when you change the leg out strength. So hopefully that will help you understand how that feature works and how it will make a change to the bands drawn on your chart. We're going to be talking about pattern setting leg in strength. Okay, we have our chart here and we have broken bands turned on just so we can see a few more examples as we make the changes. So we're going to be talking about the leg in setting. Okay, so in this scenario here, looking at this band, this is our leg in, our base, and our leg out. So the leg in default setting is 0.75 ATR. So let's see what happens when we make a change to that and how it affects the number of bands on the chart. Let me get this chart set up a little better so we can get a few more. Okay, we can go in now and edit our study. Chart tool. Okay, we're going to go and change the leg in strength. The default is 0.75, and in this case we're going to make a change to this, and we're going to say we want 1.25. We have to do that for each of the patterns. Okay, so let's see. We would expect fewer bands on our chart based on this setting. Okay, and you can see quite a few bands did disappear because we're requiring a stronger leg in strength for a band to qualify. In this segment, we're talking about the band management setting penetration limit. Okay, you can see here on our chart we have this fresh band here, and this 0% right here shows that it is not penetrated at all. If you look down here in these lower bands, you can see this one is 68% penetrated and this one is 36% penetrated. So what if I don't want to have a band on my chart that's more than 50% penetrated? How would I do that? So let's go in and edit our study. We'll have to go down through the pattern settings. Okay, so right here we have band management settings, and the penetration limit, this can be 0 to 100. So we're going to put in 50, obviously, since we want it to be, anytime it's 50% penetrated, we want those bands to be removed from our chart. Okay, so you can see that the band was here, is now removed, and we only see this one band here that was 36% penetrated. So the default value is 100, so the band will not be removed from your chart until it is completely penetrated, unless you change it. In this section, we're going to talk about different display settings. The first one we're going to discuss is color. You have the ability to change color in a lot of different areas. You can change the color of the bull and bear boxes. You can change the color of the lines and the text on the bands. There's a zone origin, which we haven't talked about yet, but you can also change the color of that as well. So let me show you where that's located. We're just going to take one of these settings. So proximal line color, and we're just going to change that to yellow. And you'll notice this pound sign 17, that's a comment afterward that shows only in here. You don't have to leave that number in. It doesn't do anything, but it's just there for you if you want to know which setting number it was. So I'm going to change the proximal line color in this case to yellow. Now you do have a lot of options, and there is a basic settings reference file that you'll be getting, and it will have a link to all these different colors, but this is just to give you a quick idea. There's a lot of options, so you can be very creative. So I'm going to change that to yellow. Actually, I'm doing that in data feed 1, so let me cancel this and pick the right data feed. All right. All right. So now you can see my proximal line has been changed to the color yellow. So this can be a handy feature, especially depending on your vision and the variation in your different monitors, to be able to choose different colors. In this section, we're going to talk about the display setting of transparency. Depending on your settings, you may decide that you want to change the transparency in your bands or your bull and bear boxes, or even the transparency of a line or any text that is on the screen. So let's go do an example of that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change the transparency for the band origin, and it can be from 0 to 255, so I'm going to make this 200. And you can see here, that's the band origin. That's showing you the base that created the band, and you can see now that that's a lot bolder than up here where it's more in the background. So the transparency setting can really help you adjust your colors to your personal preferences on how you want to see things on your screen. In this next session, we're going to talk about the display setting of font size. You can change the font size for your proximal and distal of your bands. So let me show you where to do that. The font size can be anywhere from 0 to 255. In this case, your default setting is 10, and here is that feature. And I'm going to change it to 14 for this exercise. And then that's the proximal, and you can see that the distal font size is right here. So you can see that this is a lot larger font now than up in our default settings. So that can be very handy as you adjust your charts to your specific needs. In this segment, we're going to talk about the display setting line thickness. Okay, so the line thickness can be anywhere from 0 to 6, with 0 being the thinnest and 6 being the thickest. So if we go down here, so we've got proximal line thickness. So if we set that to 0, and the default is 2, by the way. And now you can see that this is a lot thinner line down here. So that can be handy for managing your charts as well. And just real quick, make sure you know where, so this was the proximal, and then we have the distal line thickness here. So those are your two areas. This section will review the display setting label offset. So the label offset will actually move the labels. The default setting is 0, and if you put in a 5, it will actually move the label 5 candles to the left. So let me show you how that works. So here's your proximal label offset. I'm going to change that to 5. And you also have that capability on the distal label. Okay, let's see. Let me line up things a little bit here for you. So we've got this upper label here. Actually, we've got to move it for the distal label. So, so you can see here, the reading for the label here starts right here. At this 0 starts here at this candle, and we've moved it 5 candles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's how the distal label offset works. The next display session that we're going to talk about is the broken band labels. You can see that broken bands are turned on the lower section, and you can see the labels. And in some cases, you may not want those labels just because they create a lot of clutter on your screen. So you can go in and edit to take those off. Here's the broken band display settings area. Display broken band labels is right here. The default is true. We are going to change that to false. And now you just see the broken bands without the labels, giving you a little cleaner look on your screens. In this section, we're going to talk about the prior trend setting called prior trend segments. So we have a chart with prior trend turned on, and one of the options we have is to change the number of segments. So we're going to go Edit Studies, go to the Chart tool, okay, So right here we have a setting for prior trend segments. The default is 3, but if we wanted to break this up into, say, 25% instead of thirds, you can see now that instead of being broken into thirds, it's broken into 25% increments. So you got 25, 50, 75, and 100. So depending on your trading style and how you like to break up your prior trend, we have that feature so that you can determine the number of segments. The next setting that we're going to talk about is segment settings and the use segment lines feature. So on our charts here, we've got our default here and the one we're modifying here on the second feed. And let's say that you do not want the bull and bear boxes, that you would prefer these to be lines. You can go into the study. We're going to go into the segment settings. Use segment lines. We're going to change that to true. And now you can see that we have lines drawn instead of the boxes. After you've been playing with your basic tools and you want to save those settings and use them on every chart, I'm going to show you how to save a study group. Okay, so I've applied tools to this chart and I've made a bunch of changes, as you can see, to the settings. So now I want to save this as a study group. So I'm going to go to Studies, Edit, and there's a button right here that says Save Study Group. I'm going to hit that, and I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it Lisa Settings. And then I'll close that. Now, when you want to put these settings on a new chart, all you have to do is go here to Studies, go to Add Study Group, and then we're going to go down here. There's my settings, and you can see there's the basic chart tool indicator. You can either tell it to replace all the settings and studies on the chart, and I suggest you prompt for editing so you can turn on and off whatever features you want. So hopefully that will help you get started with the basic tools. In this segment, we're going to review the Dump Settings in Use function. So let's say maybe you have some settings on your chart that you really like for a particular asset or interval, and you want to save a copy of those. One of the ways you can do that is you can actually dump the settings on your chart. You can also use it in the event that maybe you're not sure exactly which settings you have on the chart and you just want to double check and make sure that things are set appropriately before you start to trade. So we're going to go down here, and this is toward the bottom. So right here, Dump Settings in Use, we're going to set this to true. And you can dump them to a file. I'm going to set that also to true. And this is where it's going to dump it. So you have to have a Chart Tools folder on your computer in order to have this not give you an error when you turn this on. And then the next piece of it, Chart Tools Settings for Use, that is the name that's put on the front end of the file name so you know what type of file that is. And I'm going to go ahead and tell it to dump it as a CSV so we can put it into Excel. Okay, you can see that it has already dumped the file, and so you can see it's got that first part, chart tool settings used for, then it will tell you the asset, the interval, and then it's going to give you the year, the month, the day, and even the time of day. So 16:49 and 39 seconds. So let's open this up. And this is what your file will look like. So it will show you, we haven't talked about OSF files yet, but if you use custom OSF files to put specific settings into your chart tool, it will show you that what files were loaded. And then this shows you all your settings, even down to the colors you use for different things. So you can see it's a complete list of all the settings and the setting values. And then, so that can come in very handy. So if we want to look at the dump file and see how these settings compare to the standard default settings, we have the ability to use that through the standard compare worksheet. So let me show you how to do that. This is the compare chart tool setting standard, and we have some instructions in there for you. But right here, you can go to this feature right here to compare the settings, and it will show you if there's a difference between the settings you have and the default settings for the tools. So the first thing we have to do is go to the dump settings tab, and we need to pull the data from the other file. So if you go to this file, click up in the A1, hit Control Shift End. That will highlight all your information. Then you can hit Control C to copy it. Then you'll go over to your other file, and you're going to click on this yellow space right here. And we're going to paste 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to hit the button here to filter the data. And then what this will show us is anywhere where there's a difference between the default settings and the settings for which we have loaded on our chart. So you can see that you can actually quickly filter by the color and quickly see everything that is different. And that can be very handy when you want to make sure that you have the correct settings on your charts.